It is my pleasure to introduce a dear friend of mine, a respected artist and a respected art teacher in the school system in Secaucus. Welcome, Mr. Doug DePice.
Thank you, Catherine. It's a joy to be here.
Doug, in my introduction of you, I told everyone that you are an art teacher. Could you please provide us with an overview of your career and tell us what brought you to move your family to the town of Secaucus?
The overview of my career, well, I was born an artist. My career is art, and it isn't something you choose, it's something that chooses you, so to speak, you know. It gives you a life, and there was nothing else I could think about doing, especially when I was in college. I thought I was going to be a physical therapist or chiropractor. And my love for the human body, I didn't realize until my junior year or sophomore year in college, was basically more aesthetic than it was clinical, you know, and medical. So I gravitated toward the art naturally because I was drawing when I was 7, 8, and 9 years old, and I have a freedom about it there. There'd be a kind of escape. So I pursued it, and I started out. I had a horrible academic record in high school. I got C's and B's. I guess that's not horrible, but I couldn't get into a college. So I started at the junior college, and which was the only school I could get in. And then I made my way through there. I was sent over to Fairleigh Dickinson and for my BA. And then I wound up going, I did so well in what I was doing, I wound up going to NYU for my master's, which I was very proud of going there. And since then, I found through the art that things thought I wasn't interested in because it was art, and I read about artists, it was like suddenly they became interesting. Like I read about Rembrandt, you know, and one of my heroes, and I was like, well, he read the Bible almost every day, so to get ideas for his storytelling and his etchings, and I said, gee, maybe I should start reading the Bible, you know. Other artists use mathematics in their artwork, and I said, gee, Botticelli's using the golden rectangle and the spiral of Archimedes and the Birth of Venus. I'm going to look at the golden rectangle. And now I really wanted to know more, you know what I'm saying? So it was like through the love of one thing, all these other things suddenly became interesting. Whereas when they just sent me to school, it was very difficult. It was the science and the math, and it was just, what was the point of it, you know? But now it had a point, you know. It had a beauty. There was a dimension about it that contributed to those magical moments in your life, those deeper illuminations, you know. So, and those are important, those illuminations, because they allow for a resonation. Something resonates in you, and those deeper resonations allow for inspirations, and I believe trigger a kind of passion for something. You know, a heartfelt connection, like Michelangelo's heartfelt connection for stone, or Monet for light, Thoreau for Walden Pond, Whitman and Blade of Grass, you know. And it's those kinds of heartfelt connections that I tell my kids this. I tell them, I go, this is the brilliance I really think you can get in touch with yourself. Heartfelt connections, brilliance. Not the brilliance that has to do with scholarship. I think there are different kinds of brilliance. And the Harvard, the Yale, the Rhodes Scholar and everything, that's a different kind of brilliance. But the brilliance that's based on feelings of relatedness and heartfelt connections to things, those are the roads, those are the tools, I believe, that allow for the art to become even more than art. You know, one of my kids wrote something, I have a writing and art history class, and he wrote something, in this painting I see something more than seeing. What a beautiful line. A 16, 17-year-old kid wrote, and then of course he went on to explain even more. But I see something more than seeing. Well, he basically kind of summed up the way art is in my life. You know, when I'm looking at something, I'm seeing it in a cluster of meaning, a cluster of connections. Emily Dickinson said, I believe she said this, ideas have circumference. I think that's incredibly powerful. And it means they're relational, they connect, and I feel that that's how art is. It has circumference. I mean, it's political, it's spiritual, it's educational, it's intellectual, it's metaphysical. So, you know, throughout the years I've been able to, that's why my art has been occupied with so many different themes. I really find, you know, the study of the energy of mass beautiful, and then I find the study of the ghetto beautiful, you know, the Warsaw Ghetto, or the abandonment of street children throughout the world, or, you know, the military takeover of the banana republics in Central America, the fight for social justice there. I find all that. So, without belaboring the art thing, it's never ending, and I try to do it every day. And one of my professors said, you know, you have a gift and a problem. Basically, he said you have an incredible range. Like, you're not just you just don't draw, or you just don't paint, or watercolor isn't just it. You can do all of it. Charcoal drawing, watercolor painting, lithography. He says you're doing it. You're doing it really, really good. He said, so your problem is focusing in on what it is you want to do. You know, and so that's a little bit of the background. I've been lucky. I feel a couple of years ago, well, 1999, the Pope at the time sent out an invitation to the artists throughout the world to create a new image of Jesus for the millennium, the new millennium, and he wanted a non-traditional Jesus, not the robe, not holding the lamb, not the beard. So I had submitted a life-size study of a campesino from Nicaragua being accosted by the National Guard. Obviously, the National Guard are a parallel for the Roman soldiers, and the campesino is a Christ image, and it was really a very strong piece. So there were like about 2,000 entries. Anyway, they selected 60. I was very happy to be one of the 60. But it got even a little better than that, because among the 60, they had a competition of whose was the best. You know, the one that won the best was a traditional image. It was this young man with a robe on, holding a lamp. It was kind of like that was a little unusual. But I get a phone call because the show was touring the country. So it went from New York, it went to Chicago, went to Missouri. So my wife said, let's follow it out to Chicago. We went to New York, let's go to Chicago. Okay, so we went there for the opening. But I wasn't going to Missouri. I had other, commitments, I had to work. So about 3 or 4 months later, I get a phone call from the curator of the Museum of Contemporary Religious Art. He wants to buy it for his collection. So I was thrilled. And I met the curator. He's a Jesuit. It's the only museum in the country of his kind, Museum of Contemporary Religious Art, MOCRA, M-O-C-R-A. And he takes that image with others, but I'm very, very honored to be in the company of the other images he takes with him, because the other images are Goya and Picasso and other masters that are way beyond me. But he's showing my pieces in his talks with their pieces, and I'm very honored. I'm really very, very, very honored. So, and about living here, I always loved Secaucus. I loved it. I've been teaching here 37, 38 years. And it took me a while to get my wife to agree. But in 2006, we made the move. And my life is in Secaucus. And I feel Secaucus embraces that mystery of something large existing in something small. Like there's a lot of beauty here. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of significance here, and I've devoted my life and my career to what goes on here, and it's evident when I have an exhibit the amount of people that turn out, and I'm flattered every time, and I'm honored. But I do believe that, if you're just making art and you're not teaching people why art's important and how to look at it and why it's of value, what's the point of making it? And yet these people come and they buy, and my art is in their homes and it's in the lives of their children. And I think that's great.
We think it's great. I happen to have a piece in my home.
And I'm glad you do.
Yeah, I know you do. But, years ago, you and I had discussions similar to what you're saying today, and you give me this little bit about art and looking at things differently. And then I told you that there wasn't enough culture or art information in this town. And I wanted to introduce it to the library, but the building was so small. Until we got this little meeting room next door that Engine Company #1
That's right. You did.
donated
Yeah,
to us.
I remember that. That was
And
a big
who
deal.
was the first person to go into that room with his artwork? It was my Picasso.
I couldn't wait to
Mr.
use that
Doug
space. I
Tice.
was like, I've got so much art, I could fill a building.
Right, I think you wanted to get it
Yeah.
out of your attic. But it was beautiful, and it was something that the town had not witnessed before.
Yeah.
There was never any room in the first library, and the second library, by the time I was there, it was limited.
Yeah.
But we had that space. It wasn't beautiful. It wasn't.
It wasn't an exhibit space, but
It wasn't a blue velvet background
No.
that you had. There were little fire, emblems and different things on the
Yeah.
wall, but you did it. And something had to make you do that. And then other artists joined in, such as my friend sitting over here to my left, Mr. Fred Graffeld, and many others.
Yeah.
But you took the chance. And then on a Sunday afternoon, what were the programs that we did, those art appreciation
Well, we did several.
programs that you did?
I did a program, lecture series on Cézanne and Van Gogh, Monet. I did silkscreen workshops. I really liked getting, the hope for the future is in the I feel is in the minds of the young kids, and I liked the workshop that we had for the children, where we went out into nature. It was an environmental art workshop, and I asked them, we were going to go to Schmitz Woods, and we took the buses there, loaded the kids up, and they were supposed to only take with them things that they had a personal response to, they had a feeling for when they saw them. Could have been a rock, could have been a branch, could have been ripped off tree bark, it could have been a chunk of a tree, I don't know, it could have been a flower, a weed, a rusted piece of metal, anything that they found, and that they were to come back, and I gave them plastic bags, and they were to kind of load the bag up with not just one thing, but many things. And then they came back here, and we had all these, remember we had these plastic bags
Oh, yes.
loaded with what to ordinary eyes would look like just, let's get it to the DPW.
Yes.
And I said, Kathy, next week we're going to be laying these bags out all over the floor, and kids are going to be throwing their stuff out. And next week came, and they did, and they sat in the middle of their gathered little artifacts, so to speak, rocks and branches and rust and cans and whatever, and they had to create something with it, and it was beautiful, rusted wire and cord, and they made these things, and it looked like something you'd see at the Museum of Natural History after archaeologists had been in the field for 2 or 3 years in Papua New Guinea or something, or Central America, and they came back with these artifacts, and it just so happened the walls were empty, and I just asked Jen, I said, can we just hang these on those beautifully off-white walls, because they're going to look like they belong to another culture that we should learn about, and of course it's the culture of what's going on in the mind of children. But what I always remember was this one particular child was sitting in the middle of, and she had this little world, this gathering of objects around her, and it looked like she was in her world. It was a moment in which time was suspended. You can see the workings of her mind. She was just totally engaged. And I just feel that projects or lessons like that touch upon big ideas of stewardship, your relationship to nature, a sense of connections that they may not be able to verbalize yet, but connections that they are feeling, like Wordsworth says something about first feelings. Those first feelings imprint themselves very strong in the poem Intimations of Immortality. I love that idea of first feelings. And you could see like these kids were experiencing something they never experienced before. And I believe there was an imprint there. I mean, I see the kids in the hallway now at the middle school. This one kid brought like an 8-foot branch with him, 9-foot, and he was jamming it onto the bus. It was hysterical. And it had other branches coming off, you know, and I was even like, are you really going to put that on the bus? This is what I want, he's dragging this thing. It was 2 times bigger than he. And it was a beautiful
It was
moment.
a wonderful display.
I really feel it was a beautiful moment. And yeah, I've done several workshops, many workshops with the kid, but I thought that was really significant because I think the idea of stewardship is big, and I like ideas that are larger than just the community. I like global ideas and world citizenship ideas, partnership ideas. I think those all relate to the arts. I mean, the arts are a universal language. You've got Rembrandt still speaks to us, Shakespeare speaks to us. You know, those are timeless messages and timeless expressions, and they'll speak to people in the 24th and 30th century. You know, and there's that. They're part of what I think Carl Jung calls the ancestral soul or the collective unconscious. You know, they're deep. You know, and who else but to light the way? I mean, and what else is life about? You know, there's this saying, the glory of science is that it can imagine more than it can prove. Well, I think that's really the glory of life, that people reach and try to imagine more than they can actually touch and prove. You know what I mean? But it's the reaching, right?
Right, striving for something.
I think it's the reaching, and I think libraries have a significant role in all of that.
So do I gather from your speech to me that you love dealing with children, or is it young adults, or all of the above?
I really like it all.
I think you do.
I do. I really like it all.
You can feel your
especially when
passion.
they want it, you know, like when they show up for it, you know, then I know, you know, this is really going to be an interesting dialogue, and I really feel that that's the real beauty of it is that it's always a two-way street. Like I tell the kids sometimes, you know, I'm the learner, you're the teacher. You know, you're giving me more than I ever came here thinking I can give you. And I watch them or I listen to them, and I just find that to be, that's really the dialogue that's really important. There are 2 kinds of questions that involve learning. And one set that we're all familiar with are the problem-solving questions. And they're about measurement and certainty and logic and reason. And they have their function. But they're basically questions the instructor already knows the answer to.
Mm-hmm.
The kids repeat it back to him. But then there's what they call problem-finding questions. And there are questions that deal with process and relationship and analogy, connection. They're metaphoric in nature. And they reach into an individual. Like, for instance, say I was to have you look at this painting, okay? And say I just asked you, I'm going to ask you a problem-finding question. Concerning the light in the painting, what process in nature is the light in that painting most analogous to? Photosynthesis, metamorphosis, fusion, fission, osmosis, mitosis, condensation, evaporation, erosion, migration. What process? And you may see 4 different, you may see photosynthesis becoming migration in that, just in the light of the picture. You know?
And I've got this light right on it, so I can't even see that picture.
Oh, okay.
But Fred, how about
that,
you, the artist? No?
But that's a problem-finding question. It's a question that allows for crossover connections to be made, and it's a question I don't have their answer for. You get it?
It's coming also from their eyes and their head.
It's coming, and learning
their
becomes
minds.
not just an activity of the mind, but of the heart and the soul as well. So, because what you feel, your deepest feelings and finest intuitions become a part of your cerebral activity. So, those are the questions that are really, really phenomenally powerful. And I like teaching with those questions. And I've developed a course in school called Interdisciplinary Educating. I got a Dodge grant for it. And I've been teaching it now for 4 years. This is the 4th year.
that success. I'm familiar with when you got that grant and when you were
Yeah.
starting it. And
So what I'm doing with the course, really basically in a nutshell, is I'm unifying the ideas of all the disciplines, teaching them to see and think about poems, equations, molecules, and paintings in a new way. And I'm helping them to synthesize that and approach learning from a much holistic view, because the brain, if you know anything about Howard Gardner, multiple intelligences, the brain loves novelty, it loves newness, surprises. It loves context and wholeness. And what's going on in public schools and most of the curriculum is that learning is isolated. And ideas are not isolated. Ideas are really circumference, they're relational. So the best kind of learning takes place when you ask questions that cause them to see relationships, like the one I just asked you.
Right. Now you also helped us with all of this going on in your life, and helping to mold the minds of youngsters. We came to you with a Friends of the Library problem one day. We were creating a throw of the town's history. This is back about 17 years ago. And we needed a farm scene.
Oh, the
Do
nursery?
you remember that? The nursery?
The nursery, yeah.
And we couldn't find something, and there you took the time from all of this art that you do and all of these presentations that you make, and you presented us with something, and that was placed onto the throw. It's on the wall here, and we sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of that particular throw.
Yeah.
And there's the name,
Oh.
De Pice.
Thank you.
Thank you. To us, that's a treasure.
No, it was really a great opportunity to do something like that. An artist is also a member of a very local community, and if a person feels they outgrow that they've moved beyond that, I really think there's a loss there. I'm not going to say anything judgmental about that person. I just think there's a loss there. You have many relationships in your life. You've got near relationships. It's like concentric circles, and you've got relationships that are further out, some small, some very large. Small in the sense that they're every day, they're local, you see them a lot. And you've got some that require a different stage, But I don't think one should negate the other. If someone asks me to do something in town, I feel if I can make it happen, I'm going to do it. And
You're working on
just
a
good
project
karma.
now, aren't you?
It's just
With
good
the
karma.
art on. I've seen some of your artwork in places
the
that
wall
are
mural?
not. Yeah.
That's
The
really
wall
turning
mural.
out better than I thought. The mayor had said to me, I have a wall at when you enter town, it's ugly, it bothers me, and I want you to do something with it, put something on it. So I said, what'd you have in mind? He said, anything you want. He said, you got to do something with that wall. So myself and Melissa Dargan Heinches, who was a former student of mine, and now she's an art teacher in Claremont.
Yes.
He's very talented, and we work amazingly well together. It's almost like two people with one brush, And we got together and we started thinking about what to do with this wall, and for some reason the idea of famous people throughout history came to us. And our original idea was we were going to do about 50 or 60 portraits on this wall. Well, when we got to the wall and looking at it, I'm thinking 50 or 60, there's the highway there, the people are passing by at 60 miles an hour. They're going to see it blur. So I suggested we rethink that, and what if we did like 7 or 8 heads, faces, and at least people will be able to spot maybe one and it'll leave an imprint of some kind and not just be a blur.
Right.
So that's how we started, and they're basically roughly 9.5 feet high by 6.5, 7 feet wide. The Afghan, 14-year-old Afghan girl, the girl with the pearl earring, Lev Vermeer, the migrant mother, Dorothea Lange's iconic image, migrant mother. We did a portrait of, last self-portrait of Vincent van Gogh, Walt Whitman and well, Matisse's Woman with a Hat, which is a painting of his wife with this beautifully colorful hat. And for that painting, we used neon paint. So just last week, we put Anne Frank on the wall, and that's going to be the last facial image. And the last image, I think we're going to, as the wall narrows, we're going to put the creation of Adam, the hands of God.
Oh, no, interesting.
And
It is just stunning. We've driven around several times.
It's really
To be
good
able to
looking,
take
yeah.
it.
It really is a beautiful, and the beautiful part, one of the beautiful payoffs of it is we keep getting beat by truck drivers. I mean, and people would say, well, they you know,
Right.
they're not college people, they didn't get an education. You know, beauty is, the human being is hardwired to love something that's beautiful, original, unique, novel, and we were just painting there 2 days ago. We were getting beat. We had to stop painting. We kept turning around. It was a van pit, car pit, a truck, a 60-footer, UPS guy, and like you're waving, you know, but it's really an affirmation, you know, it's lovely.
It's beautiful, and
It's
I
really-
hope there's more space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're gonna hit a few more walls. I want to do
Mhm.
animals next, I think.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
I have a project here for you at the library, but I haven't ever told you about that
Oh.
one yet. But there is one. It's a
I'm ready.
great fundraiser. It's a great fundraiser. I'll mention it to Jen. With that in mind, what role does a library play in art and music and culture? And, you know, what could the library do to encourage this, other than having more programming and bringing you back every week and bringing others with their music talents and whatever? But what role can the library play? Can we do something more to enhance
The arts.
the field and the arts?
I see the library as having an incredible role in not only the community and in the county and the state, but really, and I really see it having an incredible role in the world, because it's almost like the first library was a cave,
Mm-hmm.
the cavemen. There were the cavemen, and then there was fire. And there were the cavemen, and there were pictures. And there was the people in the cave, and there was fire, pictures, and words. I think that was your first library. And no, I just did. And I think
It sounds like it.
it sounds like, you know, it's a place where people gather and share
Right.
ideas and exchange, but on a much more sophisticated level, since it's 50,000 years later. I'm just talking about those, I think, with the seeds, you know. I think internationally, I think librarians have an incredible role as the new founding fathers to lay the groundwork for a democratic global citizenship. And I know that may sound crazy and very abstract, but what I mean by that is our forefathers got together and they laid the groundwork for a country, and they wrote a Declaration of Independence. Beautiful. But I think librarians internationally, I think it's within their power to write a new kind of declaration of interdependence, of a declaration proclaiming the relationship that everybody shares with one another, and how important it is for the world to have a holistic view. We've outgrown the concept of nation states. That's over.
Mm-hmm.
We have more investment money from foreign countries in our country than we have in our country. You know, there's more Arab money here. There's more Russian money here owning things. It looks like East Coast, West Coast is America. There's this crossover, and I just feel that librarians might want to someday think about getting together and formulating some idea of a declaration of interdependence, the way redefining roles of partnership and stewardship and citizenship, equitable use of resources throughout the world, making lifestyle sustainable. Our lifestyle, if it was exported and truly succeeded in all of the other countries of the world, the earth could not sustain it. So I really do think, libraries, I know this sounds crazy, but it sounds like really large, but
No, you have to think
what are we
large.
waiting for? I mean, and I think libraries have this opportunity because I feel this is like international ground. People from all faiths come here. Think of how many places in the community do people of all faiths really go. That's free.
Right.
People of all faiths go
Right.
to restaurants, I get it. People of all faiths go to movie theaters, of course. But where information is free, where discourse and dialogue and workshops are being offered, I mean, it's really wonderful stuff. Libraries.
Right.
I mean, what a role. I mean, it's a microcosm, it could be a macrocosm, it could be wherever the director wants to go with it. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yes.
I'm not saying this is what they're going to be doing next year or 5 years from now, but
No.
there may be a league of librarians, like a League of Nations. There may be a league of librarians that say, we've got to reach out to the issues of the world here because the globe has now become so small. I tell my kids, you got the world in your pocket. That's cell phone. The world is in your pocket. You've got to think that way. What happens in the Philippines, in 3 seconds. So it isn't for not knowing anymore. It's like now that you have a responsibility to do something, even if it's just letter writing. And letter writing is significant. I didn't think it was, but I learned that on a national level, when one person writes a letter to a congressman, the way it was told to me, that one person statistically represents 500 points of view. So now 5 or 10 people write a letter. You get it?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
So that's how politicians would look at that. Just sharing everything.
For libraries to remain a place of interest and a place of information that's relevant, librarians have to change their point of view. And you're talking way in the future. That's the best point of view we've heard thus far. Some people see libraries as shrinking and not living up to their role, but there is a giant role that they can play.
I think it's giant. I think it's
I
Herculean.
agree with you 100%.
I don't know.
I appreciate you thinking.
No, I do. I think it's Herculean. I'm not being pie in the sky thinking it's gonna happen
Right.
within the next 10 years, but we're at a crossroads in our history as a planet, and there are things that are going on that are threatening. Ozone layer, deforestation, the Great Pacific Dump. Do you know about those things? The Great
Yes.
Pacific. It's the size of Texas, and it's floating out there in the Pacific Ocean, and that's only like 2 or 3 things I've mentioned. I mean, there are like 45, 50, and the Earth it's just an organic thing. It just can't keep absorbing pollutants, and libraries have something. This may not sound like it has something to do with books and print, but libraries have something to do with. They're connected to all that. I see libraries as, like the ideas. I see libraries as having circumference. Ideas have circumference. Emily Dickinson. I see libraries as having circumference. I see them as being connected to everything, and there's that saying in Buddhism. The self is like a circle whose circumference is nowhere and whose center is everywhere. It's a very cool saying, And you think about all the libraries that are in the world. Now think global. Think about all the libraries that are in America, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa. And think about the network.
That's right.
If they networked together.
That's right.
For just one idea. That's all.
Mm.
You just try out, you experiment with one idea and see what they can all do if they could coordinate one idea throughout the globe on one particular day. Say they had an Earth Day, the way we celebrate Earth Day, April 22nd.
Right.
Say they did that universally throughout 80-90% of the libraries throughout the world on that day. That would be a beginning of something. That's how I would say it. So, I mean, I know libraries do wonderful things. You have workshops, but I'm just thinking in terms of you got to raise the consciousness of, you got to change Einstein said something phenomenal. You can't solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. Isn't that cool?
That's great. I love that particular one. I'm familiar with.
That's a beauty.
It's true.
You
It's
can't
absolutely
solve
true.
a problem with the same consciousness that created it. And think about how many people form committees. They started the problem, and then they form a committee to... And how many times do they form in those committees?
Right.
Over and over and over again. And it's like, you're part of the problem.
Yeah.
Or your consciousness is part of the problem, you know.
We need you. We need you to stay here in Secaucus and keep us thinking bigger, which is what you always have. We have to conclude your
Okay.
little portion, but I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
What would you like to leave us with? What would you like Doug DeKeis to say in this segment of his history of the library? What didn't I ask you? What would you like to say? What thought would you like to leave us with?
Well, I write letters to my kids at the end of the year in my classes, and I try to get the idea across to them that art is not an end in itself, it's a means to living a more creative life, that their life is really the masterpiece, and that they contribute to that masterpiece with their own colors, known as compassion and charity and goodness and acceptance and forgiveness. And I know those are metaphoric expressions, but you color your life with those things. That's your masterpiece. And that the world doesn't really need more creators of pictures and paintings and drawings and photographs and whatever. The world really needs more creators of friendships. You have to teach kids to create friendships. That art is a means to learning to create connection. Friendships is a synonym for connections, for relationships, for imaginings, you know. It's in and of itself, it's, you know, the museums are just basically fancy garages with lots of art, you know. They haven't prevented wars.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's what
Certainly.
the Dadaists were all upset about. Like, you know, for all of the civilized, incredible visions of the Renaissance and the moderns and the French movement of Impressionism, and that the horror of World War I and mustard gas, and then the death camps, and the art had, they felt art had failed, that it really hadn't civilized or humanized anybody. So, and maybe because it's seen as an end in itself, that it's become this egotistical trip where people just are, look at me, how talented I am. Who the hell cares how talented you are? It's like, it should be a means to living a better life. Frederick Schiller wrote this book called, I think it's 26 or 27 letters on the aesthetic education of man. It changed my life. And there's the sensual, there's the aesthetic, and then there's the moral. And he based it on ideas from Greek culture. And basically, one of the things the Greeks firmly believed in was a developed feeling for beauty refines your spirit. And unless it's refining your spirit, then it's just, that beautiful sculpture is just like a flagpole or a fire hydrant. You know, it should be contributing to a richer way of life, a richer way of relating to people, a kinder, a more humanistic, dignified, respectful. And what we see here, you know, we see a world full of not that. You know, we see a world full of people who really are aware of the price of things, but the value of nothing. You know what I'm saying?
Do.
Yeah.
And I hope that the people who get to see you do this little segment of the history of the library, maybe 40, 50 years from now, I hope there's been a change. I hope there's
hope the
more Doug
librarians of the
DeKeises in the world.
All the forefathers or something going on. Very.
No, I certainly hope so. I hope that we're in a place where we can look down and say, you know, they did it.
Well,
They
they're
were able
doing
to
something.
change it.
I think it's continuously recreating itself. and that's what's really, really good about libraries. They just seem to be organic, they're moving, they're growing. So,
Well, I thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I think after that, everybody knows why I wanted you to be part of
oh,
this.
thank you so much. I'm very honored.